A scream pierced the summer fair like a gunshot, cutting through children's laughter. It was a June afternoon in Willow Creek, with no warning of what was about to unfold. Kids chased cotton candy, adults lined up for fried funnel cakes, and somewhere in the background, country music played cheerfully from a speaker tied to a wooden post. But then, suddenly, sharp and dry like thunder on a clear day, a sound tore through the air, the thud of a body hitting the hard ground, a cry of pain rising from gravel and dust. Eli Carter, 88 years old, collapsed beside the funnel cake tent. His cap, embroidered with 101st Airborne, the legendary WU-2 Paratrooper Division, tumbled off his head and rolled into the weeds like a symbol torn from the past. Pain surged through his hip, sharp and familiar, like those days on Utah Beach during the historic D-Day landings of 1944. His legs, now frail and scarred by shrapnel, could no longer carry the weight of a body worn down by time. In front of him stood 5 men, towering, like shadows eclipsing the joy of the fair. The leader, Blaze, was tall, tattooed, clad in a slick black leather vest embroidered with a coiled snake around the emblem Iron Vipers. His eyes burned with a twisted mix of hostility and sick amusement. He had shoved Eli aside after the elderly man accidentally stepped into their path between the biker gang and the game booths, spilling a tray of hot funnel cakes from one of his men. Blaze didn't apologize. He laughed. A cold, cruel laugh. Behind him, 4 others, a bald one, a dyed hair one, a gold-toothed one, and a mirrored sunglasses one, howled like a pack of hungry hyenas. Their laughter echoed through the fair's music, sharp and painful. Around them, parents taking photos, ticket sellers, a couple sharing candied fruit. All fell silent. They turned away, avoided eye contact, as if the ground in front of them had become more compelling than the man who had just fallen. Eli gripped the tent pole and tried to sit up, trembling. The same hands that once held a rifle steady in the freezing battlefields of Ardennes now shook as they searched for balance. He didn't groan. He didn't curse. His eyes locked on the hat lying quietly in the grass, the fairground lights catching the silver embroidery. 101st Airborne, Screaming Eagles. Blaze stepped forward, his heavy boots slamming the dirt. Dust rose like an insult. He leaned in, breath reeking of tobacco, and without raising his voice, made the air choke. "Old man, this ain't a place for antiques." Without waiting for a response, he snatched the cap from the weeds, held it high for the fair to see, then tossed it back to the ground like discarded trash. No one spoke. No one moved. A father pulled his child faster. A young woman hugged her teddy bear tighter, eyes darting. The funnel cake vendor, back turned, clutched the batter ladle in silence, pretending nothing was happening. Blaze was enjoying himself. He bent down, ripped a small pin from Eli's chest, a paratrooper insignia from the war, then stomped it underfoot. "Looks like a souvenir off eBay," he sneered. Still, Eli said nothing. He crawled toward the weathered cap. Every movement was a blade twisting in a tired body, but his eyes blazed, those of a soldier who never surrendered. He picked up the cap, dusted it gently with a trembling hand, smoothing the silver threads like he was touching the memory of comrades he once carried from the fire. Nearby, a teenager stood motionless, hoodie olive green, head covered. No one noticed him, but in his hand wasn't a phone. It was a modified military pager, and he, once a junior signalman under Eli's command, knew exactly what to do. From Eli's shirt pocket, he pulled out a small, faded device, an old military signal transmitter. He pressed a tiny button. A coded message pulsed silently. SOS, Willow Creek Fair. No one saw it. No one heard it. But those who needed to know would know. The fair music resumed, trying to mask the heavy quiet. But it couldn't. Willow Creek felt more crowded, yet colder, brighter, yet suffocating. The air thickened, like the sky itself was holding its breath. And then, in the distance, faint noises floated in, soft as wind, the hiss of tires, a deep engine hum, not fair rides, not food trucks. Eli looked up and nodded. No need for a watch. He'd once waited for reinforcements under fire in Bastonia, and he knew, when brothers hear the call, they come. Blaze was still laughing, but now his laughter rang out against a growing heartbeat, one not his own. The gang that once looked untouchable had crossed a line. The last line. Tension swirled around the funnel cake tent like the eye of a storm. Children stopped playing. Adults froze mid-step. And Eli, still kneeling, cap in hand, raised his head and whispered, "They're coming." Willow Creek, a small town nestled quietly beneath old pine ridges, lit up each year when the summer fair rolled in. The twinkling lights scattered like fallen stars over the game tents. Classic music, the scent of roasted corn, and children's laughter blended into a familiar melody, like the heartbeat of the town itself. But beneath the blue and white striped tent near the ring toss, where there should have been cheers and carefree joy, the air grew heavy, like the weight before a summer storm. Amos Reed, 88 years old, sat on the hard ground. In his hands, a faded cap embroidered with 101st Airborne, not worn as an accessory, but held like a living memory. The fair lights cast a soft glow on his face, illuminating deep-set wrinkles like the worn terrain of an old battle map. But his eyes, they were still sharp, still clear, with the resolve of a man who once parachuted into the hell of Normandy and lived to tell the tale. Before him stood Colt, the leader of the Iron Vipers biker gang, arms crossed, smirking. He wore a black leather jacket. His eyes glinted with the kind of cruelty only found in men who've never known sacrifice. From his hand, a plastic ring, stolen from a nearby game, sailed through the air like a mockery, landing near Amos's feet. Behind him, the other bikers burst into laughter, rough and metallic, like iron scraping against concrete. They thought they ruled this corner of the fair. But Amos didn't look at them, didn't flinch. He sat still, alone beneath the tent, gently running his hand over the cap, like tracing the contours of memory, memories that never left him. D-Day, 1944. The roar of artillery across the beaches of Normandy, sand stained red, sky filled with smoke. He had pulled 8 of his closest friends through gunfire. A bullet to the chest couldn't stop him then. He couldn't recall every detail, but he remembered the eyes of his friend Harlan, who whispered his last words while dying in Amos's arms. "Reed, keep going." Amos lived quietly in Willow Creek, a gentle old man. He sat on his porch, drank his black coffee, nodded at passers-by. No one asked about the long scar down his right arm. No one questioned why. When the wind changed seasons, he would fall silent and stare westward. His small wooden house bore no medals. They all lay tucked inside a rusted tin box, alongside old photographs, handwritten letters, and a battlefield map he once carried beneath his armor. Today, his silence was broken. Colt didn't see a veteran. He saw a target. An old man, frail, slow, an easy excuse to show off before his crew. He didn't know those trembling shoulders had once carried a dying comrade for hundreds of yards under falling bombs. He didn't know those eyes had once led an entire squad through sniper fire using only instinct and will. Amos bowed his head quietly, then reached into the pocket of his shirt. No one noticed, or cared enough to notice, as he pulled out a small, time-worn object, an old military pager, the kind paratroopers carried like lifelines. His fingers, though trembling, pressed the button with perfect precision. A small light blinked. The signal was sent. A brief message flashed on the tiny screen. SOS, Willow Creek Fair. Recipient, Ben Harper, his old squad mate, the last living brother from the 101st Airborne. The message left in silence. No one at the fair knew what had just happened, except Amos. He tucked the device back into his pocket and sat still, eyes fixed on the distance, not toward the games or the spinning lights, but where the blacktop road cut across the southern field, where he could already feel the low rumble in the ground. Not fairground music, but engines, coming from afar, like a promise from a world that never forgets. A few kids nearby stopped playing. A little girl clutched her mother's hand and whispered, "Who is he, Mama?" But the mother just hurried her along. The old man at the ticket booth, pale-faced, quietly texted someone. No one stepped in, but a quiet unease spread like static before a storm. Colt was still there, laughing loudly, light flickering off the steel rings on his wrists like the glint of a blade. But only Amos knew. This silence would not last long. He placed the 101st Airborne cap on his head, adjusting it carefully, slowly, like he once did before a jump. His hand trembled, but his eyes, steel-sharp, locked onto the distant road, where headlights now shimmered at the edge of the coming dusk. Each tremor, every distant growl of engine, was a drumbeat rising. Willow Creek had never seen anything like this, but it was about to begin. The plastic rings hit the hard ground beside the game tent with a hollow clack, like the drumbeat of mockery echoing through air drained of oxygen. Those harmless toys, meant for children, had become weapons of humiliation. With every bounce against the earth, they rang out not just cold and loud, but carved into an already heavy silence. Colt, arms still crossed, wore the satisfied grin of a predator drunk on control. He stood in the dusty midway of the Willow Creek fairgrounds like a beast who had tasted easy victory. Eli didn't flinch. He remained seated, his dusty, bony hands curled against a body weighed down by age. Yet in his eyes, there was no fear, no weakness, only the quiet light, recognizable only to those who had walked through war, of a man who once stood upright in the hail of bullets over Normandy. Colt wasn't done. Drunk on power, emboldened by no resistance, he grabbed Eli's shirt collar and yanked. The sound of tearing fabric ripped through the air, an awful noise that made the crowd instinctively hold its breath. The old button-down split open, revealing a long, dark scar slashing across Eli's left chest, left by the bullet that tore through him on June 6, 1944. Colt laughed, loud, bitter, distorted by ignorance and arrogance. "Did you draw that on?" he sneered. "What is this, cosplay for old soldiers?" He turned and waved to his crew, encouraging them. The young bikers roared, hurling more plastic rings. Some hit the tent pole, snapping back like cruel applause from a wicked audience, but no one else laughed. Eli didn't respond. He bowed his head slightly and slowly inched toward his old cap, lying in the dry grass where the dust had yet to settle. That cap, stitched with the words 101st Airborne in silver thread, had crossed oceans with him, through fog and fire and steel rain on D-Day. And now, his fingertips brushed it like one might touch the outstretched hands of fallen brothers. His gaze didn't linger on the dirt. It passed through it, through the dust and the fair and the years, into a memory unfolding, not in blood and fire, but in the steady eyes of a soldier who never surrendered. Around him, people still stood. A young mother held her daughter, trying to shield her from what the child had already whispered. "Mommy, why did that man fall?" Another girl clutched a pink teddy bear and stared, unblinking. The sandwich vendor, his apron greasy, turned his back. His hand gripped a butter knife tighter, as if trying to hold back trembling. And in a quiet corner, the elderly ticket man, thin, sun-worn, was trembling as he typed on an old flip phone. His fingers were slow but steady. He said nothing, didn't step forward. But in his eyes, there was something, a quiet, aching apology, like he wished he'd protected someone who never should have needed protecting. In Eli's shirt pocket, the old military pager buzzed, so faint it was almost inaudible. But he felt it. A small light blinked. A line of text appeared. Signal received. Ben confirmed. No one else noticed. No one at the fair knew what was coming down the main road. But Eli did. His body knew. His soul remembered. Because men who once jumped into fire together, who once listened on the same frequency, didn't need words to understand. The rumble began to rise, soft, like wind before a storm, but steady and rhythmic. The ground began to carry it, the weight of heavy tires rolling over dry dirt. No one at the fair noticed, except Eli. Colt stood there still, grinning crookedly, eyes glowing like hot coal. He didn't hear the rumble, didn't see the lights just starting to glint at the edge of the fairgrounds, slipping between the poles wrapped in cheap bulbs. He was drunk on cheap power, on sweat and beer and the illusion of invincibility. Eli leaned against the tent pole and exhaled deeply. His hand rested on the old cap. The coarse fabric scratched gently against his palm. His gaze didn't follow Colt, didn't track the bikers, didn't scan the crowd. It went straight to the fair's edge. There, cutting through the haze, headlights pierced the settling dust like ancient torches lit from a time the world had tried to forget. He didn't check his watch, didn't count the seconds. Justice was coming, and he knew it, not fast, not loud, but certain, like a platoon returning from history. Dear listeners, now would be the perfect time to take a breath, sip some water, and settle in, because what happens next will change everything. And where are you tuning in from? What time is it in your part of the world? Drop a comment. We love knowing someone out there is listening, no matter how far away. The engine roared like thunder across a clear sky, shaking the very heart of the Willow Creek Fair. It wasn't an ice cream truck. It wasn't the carousel spinning gently in the distance. It was the sound of real engines, deep, heavy, unrelenting, not meant for fun, meant for change. From the southern entrance, just beyond where the fair's lights faded into darkness, 3 weathered SUVs appeared. Dust rose in rolling clouds. Plastic ribbons snapped like battle flags in the wind. The tires didn't slow. They rolled in like a unit in formation, steady, unstoppable, and cold. People near the game tents turned in surprise. Then, the doors opened. The first to step out of the lead SUV was Ben Harper, 87, tall, despite the weight of time. He wore an olive jacket. Over his left chest, the 101st Airborne badge still shone, untouched by age. His face was stern, but his eyes, those eyes, still blazed with the same fire they held at 19 when he parachuted into the burning skies over Normandy. Behind him, 6 more men stepped out. White-haired, steel-eyed, each bearing the same badge. Their posture defied the years. No words, no banners, no introductions. Their very presence cracked the air open like a lightning strike. 10 miles back, a few hours earlier, in a small cabin tucked into the hillside, where Ben Harper lived among black and white photographs and memories, an old military pager let out a soft beep. Its screen blinked once. Ben read the words, shaky but unmistakable. SOS, Willow Creek Fair, from Eli. He didn't ask questions, didn't hesitate. He set his coffee mug down, stood up, and opened the cabinet behind his chair. Inside, medals never displayed, a worn D-Day map, and a dagger etched with names of fallen friends. 10 minutes later, he had called 6 others from the old unit. Eli needs us. No one declined. No one asked why. They drove through the night, over fields and gravel roads, not for duty, but for the brotherhood forged in blood and scar. At the fair, Colt started to feel it. The crowd wasn't looking at him anymore. The eyes that once turned away or looked past him were now focused behind him. The laughter faded. No one said a word. But Colt felt it shift. Ben walked toward the game tent. Each step was deliberate. His eyes locked onto Colt like a rifle sight, unblinking, unwavering. Behind him, his brothers in arms fanned out, forming a silent arc, unbreakable. No one held a weapon. But the look in their eyes, the strength in their stride, and the gleaming badges beneath the fairground lights were declaration enough. We're here. Colt, just minutes ago laughing at another man's pain, took half a step back. He'd never seen an 87-year-old look that sharp. Sweat beaded on his brow, though the night air was cool. His biker gang didn't laugh anymore. Some backed away. Some pulled out their phones, not to film, but to call someone. Ben didn't threaten. He didn't raise his voice. He said just one thing, and it tore through Colt's arrogance like a blade through paper. Eli, saved my life at Normandy. You weren't even born yet. The words struck like a punch to Colt's hollow pride. He froze. 1 second. 2. Then he looked down, for the first time that night, unable to meet another man's eyes. And then Eli stood. His hand clutched the 101st Airborne cap, not like a relic, but like a flag. He walked toward Ben. His eyes, once quiet, patient, waiting for justice, now burned like a torch. He didn't need help. No cane. He stood in the middle of the circle his brothers formed, like the last column of a temple long believed fallen. Still standing. Ben didn't speak. He just placed a hand on Eli's shoulder. No words needed. In that simple gesture, 80 years of friendship reignited. Quiet, but fierce. A fire that never went out, just waited for the right wind to burn again. The Willow Creek Fair fell silent. Not from fear, but from respect. The little girl holding the pink teddy bear, the one who'd clung to her mother's hand in fear. She clapped first, a small, awkward clap, but it spread like ripples on water. Another joined in, then another. People who once turned away turned back. Applause rose. People stood tall. Some removed their hats. Some placed hands over hearts. The fair had never seen anything like it. And Colt, he understood. No one shouted. No one forced him to kneel. But he had been defeated. Not by fists, but by presence. A siren blared. Police lights flashed at the far end of the fair. Colt didn't resist, didn't speak. When the handcuffs clicked and they led him away, he walked in silence. Under hundreds of eyes, not angry stares, but eyes that demanded one thing. Face yourself. No sirens, no shouts. But when Ben Harper stepped forward, the air at the Willow Creek Fair seemed to contract. Colt stood frozen. His lips twitched. His eyes darted toward the old men who had just arrived. But Ben's gaze never left him. It was cold as steel, not filled with hate, only truth. He didn't need noise or authority. Just one quiet sentence from this silver-haired man cut through Colt's bravado like a hammer through glass. "He saved my life in Normandy. You weren't even born yet." Ben didn't raise his voice, but every word dropped like an anvil on the arrogance Colt had wrapped around himself just minutes before. The air turned thick. No one moved. Only a soft breeze stirred the string lights above the game tent. Colt faltered. Panic flickered in his eyes. His back stiffened. Arms dropped, like the last of his armor had been stripped away. Behind him, the bikers who had laughed so loudly now said nothing. A few looked down. Some turned away. Around Ben stood the old soldiers, white-haired, thin-shouldered. Yet every step they took left an imprint deeper than time. They carried no weapons, but the small, glinting badges on their chests, 101st Airborne, said everything this crowd had never imagined. And then Amos stood. He needed no help, no cane. His hand clutched the old fabric cap embroidered with 101st Airborne, still dusty from the ground, like a memory not yet wiped clean. He stood tall, back-bent by age, but eyes lifted. Clear, proud, unflinching. No one asked him to speak. But Eli began. Not with shouts, not with tears, just a voice, steady and deep, like aged oak. He told of D-Day, of the beaches of Normandy, of the screech of bullets, of dragging 8 friends through fire even after a bullet pierced his chest, not to boast, but to remind. Sometimes silence is its own act of heroism. People listened. At first, just those nearby. Then the whole crowd. Even those who had turned away before, now turned back. Some bowed their heads. Some wiped their eyes. A little girl, hugging a pink teddy bear, didn't understand everything. But her small hands were the first to clap. Awkward. Innocent. And then more followed. One by one. Scattered applause became waves, a rhythm of recognition. Colt could not stand under that truth. When the police arrived, he said nothing. He bowed his head, walked quietly. No one shouted him down. No one cursed. But the eyes, hundreds of them, spoke louder than any courtroom. The bikers withdrew silently. No cheers followed. Only stillness. The kind that teaches a town how to remember. The next morning, Willow Creek woke up changed. Beside the game tent, Where Amos Reed had fallen the day before, a wooden plaque had been raised. Mounted with hand-forged iron nails on a stone base, the plaque bore simple, weighty words. In honor of Amos Reed, D-Day veteran, 1944, 101st Airborne Division. Not all heroes wear armor, but they always stand tall. Passers-by paused. A child asked her mother, "Who was he?" And for the first time, the answer didn't come from a movie, but from real memory. A veteran sitting on a nearby bench, one who'd once fought in the same division, gave a quiet nod, as if saluting across time. 1 week later, in the old metal mailbox outside Amos's home, there was a handwritten letter. No return address. The handwriting was crooked, stiff, trembling, the kind written by someone struggling against himself. I was wrong. I'm ashamed of what I did. I've signed up to volunteer at the Veterans Center. I can't make it right, but I want to start there. Colt. Amos said nothing when he finished reading. He folded the letter, placed it in the wooden drawer beside the window, where he kept old letters from fellow soldiers. His eyes turned to the front yard, where morning light poured over the white picket fence and touched the weathered gate. He didn't speak, just nodded. Once. His gaze drifted far, maybe to the beaches of Normandy, maybe to the faces of friends now gone. Willow Creek had changed. Not with banners, but with how people looked. Not with speeches, but with truth finally recognized. And he, the old soldier, the man once mocked and ignored, had finally been seen, not for what he claimed, but for what he had quietly carried his whole life. Where are you listening from? Are you tuning in from the United States? Leave us a comment. We're always honored to hear from every corner, every time zone. Comment 1 if this story moved you. Let us know you're still here, so that stories like these keep being told, keep stirring hearts, and keep shining light on the things we must never forget. Because sometimes a soldier doesn't need to be celebrated. He just needs to be seen.